sign upon your hand, and they shall be for a reminder to your eyes. Ukaftam el muzozot betecha, uvishalecha, and you shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gate. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with your Torah and has given us the light of life in Jesus our Messiah, Prince of Peace.
Spirit of the Lord will rest upon you, spirit of wisdom, understanding, spirit of wisdom, understanding, spirit of counsel, and power, the spirit of knowledge, and the fear of the Lord.
Deuteronomy chapter 3, beginning in verse 23. I also pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, thou hast begun to show thy servant thy greatness and thy strong hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as thine? Let me, I pray, cross over and see the fair land that is beyond the Jordan, that good hill country in Lebanon. Chapter 3, verse 26. But the Lord was angry with me on your account, and would not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, Enough. Speak to me no more of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah, and lift up your eyes to the west, and north, and south, and east, and see it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan. But charge Joshua, and encourage him, and strengthen him, for he shall go across at the head of his people, and he shall give them as an inheritance the land which you will see. So we remained in the valley opposite Beth Peor. Chapter 4. And now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I am teaching you to perform, in order that you may live and go in and take possession of the land which the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I am commanding you, nor take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord has done in the case of Baal Peor. For all the men who followed Baal Peor, the Lord your God has destroyed them from among you. But you who held fast to the Lord your God are alive today, every one of you. See, I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do thus in the land where you are entering to possess it. So keep and do them, for that is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as the Lord our God whenever we call on him? Or what great nation is there that has statutes and judgments as righteous as this whole law which I am setting before you today? Only give heed to yourself, and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life, but make them known to your sons and your grandsons. Remember the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, when the Lord said to me, Assemble the people to me, that I may let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children. And you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the very heart of the heavens, darkness, cloud, and thick gloom. Then the Lord spoke to you from the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but you saw no form, only a voice. So he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, that is, the 10 Commandments, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you may perform them in the land where you are going over to possess it. So watch yourselves carefully, since you did not see any form on the day the Lord spoke to you at Horeb from the midst of the fire, lest you act corruptly and make a graven image for yourselves in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the sky, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the water below the earth. And beware lest you lift up your eyes to heaven and see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, and be drawn away and worship them and serve them, those which the Lord your God has allotted to all the peoples under the whole heaven. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace from Egypt to be a people for his own possession, as today. Now the Lord was angry with me on your account, and swore that I should not cross the Jordan, and that I should not enter the good land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. For I shall die in this land. I shall not cross the Jordan, but you shall cross and take possession of this good land. So watch yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make for yourselves a graven image in the form of anything against which the Lord your God has commanded you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. When you become the father of children and children's children, and have remained long in the land, and act corruptly, and make an idol in the form of anything, and do that which is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, so as to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that you shall surely perish quickly from the land where you are going over the Jordan to possess it. You shall not live long on it, but shall be utterly destroyed. And the Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you shall be left few in number among the nations, where the Lord shall drive you. And there you will serve gods, the work of man's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him, if you search for him, with all your heart and all your soul. When you are in distress, and all these things have come upon you in the latter days, you shall return to the Lord your God, and listen to his voice. For the Lord your God is a compassionate God. He will not fail you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant with your fathers, which he swore to them. Indeed, ask how concerning the former days. Indeed, ask now concerning the former days which were before you, since the day that God created man on the earth, and inquire from one end of the heavens to the other, has anything been done like this great thing, or has anything been heard like it? Has any people heard the voice of God speaking from the midst of the fire, as you have heard it, and survived? Or has a God tried to go to take for himself a nation from within, another nation by trials, by signs and wonders, and by war, and by a mighty hand, and by an outstretched arm, and by great terrors, as the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? To you it was shown that you might know that the Lord, He is God. There is no other besides Him. Out of the heavens He let you hear His voice to discipline you. And on earth He let you see His great fire, and you heard His words from the midst of the fire. Because He loved your fathers, therefore He chose their descendants after them, and He personally brought you from Egypt by His great power, driving out from before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in and to give you their land for an inheritance, as it is today. Know therefore today, and take it to your heart, that the Lord, He is God in heaven above, and on earth below. There is no other. So you shall keep His statutes and His commandments, which I am giving you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may live long on the land which the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Then Moses set apart 3 cities across the Jordan to the east, that a manslayer might flee there, who unintentionally slew his neighbor without having enmity toward him in the past, and by fleeing to one of these cities he might live. Bezer in the wilderness on the plateau for the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan for the Manassites. Now this is the law which Moses set before the sons of Israel. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the ordinances which Moses spoke to the sons of Israel when they came out from Egypt, across the Jordan in the valley opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon, whom Moses and the sons of Israel defeated when they came out from Egypt. And they took possession of his land and the land of Og, king of Bashan, the 2 kings of the Amorites, who were across the Jordan to the east, from Aroer, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon, even as far as Mount Sion, that is, Hermon, with all the Arabah across the Jordan to the east, even as far as the sea of the Arabah at the foot of the slopes of Pisgah. Chapter 5. Then Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the ordinances which I am speaking to you today in your hearing, that you may learn them and observe them carefully. The Lord your God made a covenant with us at Horeb. The Lord did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, with all of those of us alive here today. The Lord spoke to you face to face at the mountain from the midst of the fire, while I was standing between the Lord and you at that time, to declare to you the word of the Lord, for you were afraid because of the fire and did not go up the mountain. He said, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourselves an idol, or any likeness of what is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the water underneath the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, and on the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your ox or your donkey or any of your cattle or your sojourner who stays with you, so that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. Honor your father and your mother, as the Lord your God has commanded you, that your days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with you in the land which the Lord your God gives you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, and you shall not desire your neighbor's house, his field, or his male servant, or his female servant, his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. These words the Lord spoke to all your assembly at the mountain from the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick gloom with a great voice, and he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. And it came about, when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, that you came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders, and you said, Behold, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We have seen today that God speaks with man, yet he lives. Now then, why should we die? For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God any longer, then we shall die. For who is there of all flesh who has heard the voice of the living God speaking from the midst of the fire, as we have, and lived? Go near and hear all that the Lord our God says. Then speak to us all that the Lord our God will speak to you, and we will hear and do it. And the Lord heard the voice of your words when you spoke to me. And the Lord said to me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people, which they have spoken to you. They have done well in all that they have spoken. Oh, that they had such a heart in them, that they would fear me and keep my commandments always, that it may be well with them and their sons forever. Go, say to them, return to your tents. But as for you, stand here by me, that I might speak to you all the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which you shall teach them, that they may observe them in the land which I am giving them to possess. So you shall observe to do just as the Lord your God has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the right or to the left. You shall walk in all the way which the Lord your God has commanded you, that you may live, and that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which you shall possess. Now this is the commandment, the statutes, and the judgments which the Lord your God has commanded me to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you are going over to possess it, so that you and your sons and your grandson might fear the Lord your God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. O Israel, you should listen and be careful to do it, that it might be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand. They shall be as frontals on your forehead. And you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Then it shall come about, when the Lord your God brings you into the land which he swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you, great and splendid cities which you did not build, and houses full of all good things which you did not fill, and hewn cisterns which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant, and you shall eat and be satisfied. Then watch yourself, lest you forget the Lord who brought you from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall fear only the Lord your God, and you shall worship him and swear by his name. You shall not follow other gods, any of the gods of the people who surround you. For the Lord your God in the midst of you is a jealous God, Otherwise, the anger of the Lord your God will be kindled against you, and he will wipe you off the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. You should diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God, and his testimonies, and his statutes which he has commanded you. And you shall do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the good land which the Lord swore to give to your fathers, by driving out all your enemies from before you, as the Lord has spoken. When your son asks you in time to come, saying, what do the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments mean which the Lord our God has commanded you? Then you shall say to your son, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord brought us from Egypt with a mighty hand. Moreover, the Lord showed great and distressing signs and wonders before our eyes against Egypt, Pharaoh, and all his household. And he brought us out from there in order to bring us in, to give us the land which he had sworn to our fathers. So the Lord commanded us to observe all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God, for our good always, and for our survival, as it is today. And it will be righteous for us if we are careful to observe all this commandment before the Lord our God, just as he commanded us. When the Lord your God shall bring you into the land where you are entering to possess it, and shall clear away many nations before you, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and stronger than you. And when the Lord your God shall deliver them before you, and you shall defeat them, then you shall utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, and show no favor to them. Furthermore, you shall not intermarry with them. You shall not give your daughters to their sons, nor shall you take their daughters for your sons. For they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will quickly destroy you. But thus you shall do to them. You shall tear down their altars, and smash their sacred pillars, and hew down their asherim, and burn their graven images with fire. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his own possession out of all the peoples who were on the face of the earth. The Lord did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any of the peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But because the Lord loved you and kept the oath which he swore to your forefathers, the Lord brought you out by a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God, who keeps his covenant and his loving kindness to 1,000th generation with those who love him and keep his commandments, but repays those who hate him to their faces, to destroy them. He will not delay with him who hates him. He will repay him to his face. Therefore you shall keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I am commanding you today to do them.
God promises us to take care of us. He promises it. He tells us in our reading in Deuteronomy a very simple thing. Do what I command you, and everything will be fine. Pretty simple, isn't it? Do what I command you, and it will be fine. It will be well with you. You will live long and prosper, right? What is Spock's thing on Star Trek? Live long and prosper. Well, God told us that a long time ago. God told us that a long time ago. I want you to live long and prosper, but there's a condition to it. And that condition is you do what I ask you to do. Is it really that hard? Apparently it is, because I don't see it happening around the world today any more than you do. And I sometimes look at it and I go, Lord, is it really that hard? Why do we think it is so hard? Why do we not understand this? Why don't we get it? I think it's because we don't want to. In part. Because mankind has listened to the serpent a little too long. And the serpent said to Eve, well, God doesn't want you to take of this fruit, because He knows that the day you take of it, you'll be like Him, and you'll be able to know right from wrong. You'll be able to discern what's right and wrong, and God won't be able to tell you what's right and wrong, because you'll know what's right and wrong. And we still to this day want to tell God that we know what's right and what's wrong. And God says, yeah, you can know what's right and what's wrong, and it's written all here. Just read it. Read it, understand it, obey it. It's not that complicated. We complicate everything, which is easy to do. We argue over even the basic 10 Commandments. I watched a discussion this week in one of the chat rooms regarding this commandment right here. You shall not murder. Now, in my translation, it says, you shall not murder. That's in Deuteronomy 5, verse 17. It's part of what's called the 10 Commandments. And this person said, it says you shall not kill. So what Israel is doing against Hamas is wrong, because God says don't kill. God never said don't defend yourself. God said don't commit murder. Murder is not the same as killing. It really isn't. And if you look in the Hebrew, that word that is translated kill, murder, whatever, you shall not cause, it's kind of a shall not take life unnecessarily.
That's like what Cain did to Abel.
He took life unnecessarily. That was murder. It was out of jealousy. It was out of his purposes, his desires. I can't look at someone, my neighbor, and say, I want his land, go kill him and take over it. No, the commandments are against that. First of all, we're not supposed to look at my neighbor's land and covet it. But second of all, unnecessary killing is not okay. The word talks about the blood crying out from the ground. Well, that's why it cries out from the ground. Does that mean that justice or judgment cannot be given? No, that's the rule and that's the role of the government that God sets up for people. God sets up a governmental structure and He says enforce the rules, and when there are rules that are broken and they are deserving of death, then enforce that. That's up to the government. The structure that God puts over man. That doesn't mean I have the right to go out and decide who I'm going to kill and who I'm not going to kill. But it also doesn't mean that the government has no right to defend themselves. Nor does it mean that I don't have a right to defend myself. We argue over semantics, and really it's pretty simple. And we keep arguing over all of the semantics, and we make it hard. And God says, just do what I said. do what I said. As an individual, do what I said. God promises them, and Moses calls down at the command of God, and he says, I'm going to challenge you this day. Be careful not to forget God. Learn to do what God said. Because if you don't, you will be cast out of the land. Don't follow other gods, or you will be cast out of the land. Teach your children to obey the word of the Lord, so that you can live long in the land. But if we don't follow them, then we're cast out. And what happens when we're cast out? We feel alone. There's a loneliness. When we do not obey God, there's an emptiness within us that happens. And yes, he is talking to the people and he's talking to the nation, but there's a way that he's also talking to us as individuals. That all we've got to do is obey his word. This Sabbath begins the Sabbaths of consolation. And I like that. I appreciate that about God. Because you know, where there's judgment, it's always done in terms of correction. So anytime a prophet spoke judgment, he always spoke hope with it also. Did you know that? The hope is in God. God wasn't about being angry. He didn't bring judgment because he's an angry God. He brings judgment because he loves his people. He gets angry because he loves. I've had a little bit of training in counseling, and one of the things that they'll tell you in counseling and doing couples counseling or marriage counseling, what is the opposite of love? We
think hate.
We think hate, but guess what? If you hate, that means you still care about the person, and that can be turned around. The opposite of love is apathy. The opposite of love is apathy. If the person, if you're sensing anger, if you're sensing hatred, if you're sensing that kind of emotion, what you're sensing from the person is they still care about the other person, and you can take that and you can use that to help mend a relationship. But if it's like, I don't care what they do, I really don't care, let them do what they want. If it's apathy, it's basically over. Only God can change that. Why does God get angry with his people? Because he loves his people and he cares about his people and he wants the best for us. So when there is judgment, there is always hope. Isaiah chapter 40 would be the reading out of the prophets for this Shabbat. The beginning of the readings of consolation, the beginning of the readings of hope. And it says this, Isaiah 40, verse 1, Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak kindly to Jerusalem, and call out to her that her warfare is ended. Her iniquity has been removed. She has received of the Lord's hand double for all of her sins. A voice is calling, clear the way for the Lord in the wilderness. Make smooth in the desert a highway for our God. Let every mountain be lifted up. Let every valley be lifted up, and every mountain and hill made low. Let the rough ground become a plain, and the rugged terrain a broad valley. And the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all flesh will see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. A voice says, Call out. Then he answered, What shall I call out? All flesh is grass. All its loveliness is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when the breath of the Lord blows on it. Surely people are like grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. Get yourself up high on a mountain, O Zion, bearer of good news. Lift up your voice mightily, Jerusalem, bearer of good news. Lift it up. Do not fear. Say to the cities of Judah, here is your God. Behold, the Lord God will come with might, with his arm ruling for him. Behold, his reward is with him, his recompense before him. Like a shepherd, he will tend his flock. In his arms he will gather the lambs and carry them in his bosom. He will gently lead the nursing ewes. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens by the span? Calculated the dust of the earth by the measure, weighed the mountains in a balance, and the hills in a pair of scales? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord? Or has, as his counselor, has informed him? With whom did he consult, and who gave him understanding? Who taught him in the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and informed him of the way of understanding? Behold, the nations are like a drop from a bucket, and are regarded as a speck of dust on the scales. Behold, he lifts up the islands like fine dust. Even Lebanon is not enough to burn, nor its beasts enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are regarded by him as less than nothing and as meaningless. To whom then will you liken our God? Or what likeness will you compare with him? As for the idol, a craftsman crafts it. A goldsmith plates it with gold, and a silversmith fashions chains of silver. He who is too impoverished for such an offering selects a tree that does not rot, and he seeks out for himself a skilled craftsman to prepare an idol that will not totter and fall. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been declared to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the vault of the earth. Its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. Who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in? It is he who reduces rulers to nothing, and who makes the judges of the earth meaningless. Scarcely have they been planted, scarcely have they been sown, scarcely has their stalk taken root in the earth. But he merely blows on them, and they wither, and the storm carries them away like stubble. To whom will you liken me, that I should be his equal, says the Lord, the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high. See who has created these. The one who leads forth their hosts by number, and he calls them all by name. Because of his greatness, his might, the strength of his power, not one is missing. The sons of Abraham were likened unto the stars in the sky. And God says of those stars, not one is missing in his understanding. We read about all the stuff that's happening in Israel right now. We read about the horrors that are happening in Iran, Iraq, all through the world there. We read about Syria and those who love the Lord. We read about children who are being beheaded. We read about mothers who are killed. We read about all of these horrible things that are being done in the name of Islam. And the word says this, comfort my people. These rulers are temporary. They're like grass. All he has to do is blow on them and they will be gone. All he has to do is blow on them. He says, if my people will do what I say, that I will drive out these inhabitants of the land. He will drive them out. And he will bring about justice. And he is the one we can trust. And all we've got to do is obey. And do exactly what we read earlier today. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Yeshua said hang all of the commandments. All of them hang on this. And the second one is like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. They say of the 10 Commandments, the first grouping is all about how we love God. Then on the Sabbath, how we love God. And the next one is about how we love man. So it is about loving God, loving each other. That's what it's about. That's all that it's about. Let's not make it complicated. Let's love Him all we have. Let's look to Him for direction, look to Him for the answers. In the midst of our struggle, in the midst of our trouble, He's the one that's going to conquer, not us. It's going to be Him. His doing. All He has to do is speak it out. And He says that in doing this, not one will be lost. Not one. That means you and that means me. He will not lose us. That means Mark. That means the others that are not here today for various reasons. He will not lose His people. He will not lose them. He knows. He knows. And so we trust Him. Sometimes that's all we can do, right? Let's trust Him. And really, is that such a hard place to be? Only if I'm still trying to figure it all out myself. Only if I'm still trying to play the role of God in my life. That's hard. That's hard. I've been there. I still go there sometimes, trying to figure it out, trying to plan it out. And what He says is do the next right thing. So that's my challenge this week, is just do the next right thing. Love the Lord your God. Begin your day with Him. In the middle of your day, recognize and honor Him again. Love Him in the evening. There was a song I learned when I was a teenager, and we used to sing it around the campfires. Love Him in the morning when you see the sun rising. And love Him in the evening 'cause He took you through the day. And in the in-between time when you feel the pressure coming, remember that He loves you and He promises to stay. Really simple. Love Him in the morning when you see the sun rising. Love Him in the evening. He took you through the day. And in the in-between time when you feel the pressure coming, remember that He loves you and He promises to stay. Today's message is real simple, and I'm not going to keep going because that's it. That's all of it. I look to Him. He's the one my help comes from. Father, thank you. Thank you that it's sweet. Thank you that it's simple. Thank you that you love us. Thank you that you guide our steps and you protect us, even from ourselves. Thank you that not one will be missing. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Lord and our Savior. Amen and amen. The Lord bless you, and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you. The Lord bless you, and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you, and be gracious unto you, and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up His countenance on you and give you peace. Shabbat Shalom. Shalom Aleichem.